Okay, welcome back. This segment I just want to cover basically what amounts to war stories and wisdom that I have gained from having been an inspector for almost 25 years. So rather than have you go the next 25 years and gather these experiences the same way, I'm going to upload them to you up front, and then you can start with that level of wisdom. So first off, spiders. For most of us, and depending on where you live, the two kinds of spiders you've got to be most concerned about are your funnel web spider and the black widow. If you get bit by one of those guys, go to the hospital. I have seen where people almost lost their leg, and the same guy almost lost his life because he got bit and he just let it, he didn't do anything, he finished his task. He just figured he'd shrug it off, and yeah, that was not the right choice to make. So spiders in themselves are definitely something that you've got to be watchful of, and you got to protect yourself. You get into a crawl space, you really ought to have some sort of a full body suit on to protect yourself that way. You can get those at places like Home Depot. There's painting bodysuits that you can wear that provide adequate protection for most of your body from spiders. They leave your head and perhaps your feet and sometimes your arms exposed, and you can protect those another way. Another thing I'd have you be aware of as relates to spiders, as you go into maybe a crawl space, and let's say you see spider webs over in maybe the northeast corner. If that's the case, you've got a water history in the northeast corner, because what's happening is spider webs follow spiders, spiders follow bugs, and bugs follow moisture. So if you've got a whole bunch of moisture in a particular corner, you need to take a long, hard look at that corner from inside and outside that corner to find out why that corner is getting wet. Sometimes it's roof drainage, sometimes it's sprinklers, you know, whatever it is, you got to identify that. That is part of the home inspection. Another thing is, you know, if you've got those sorts of water issues, there's going to be bugs and, you know, earwigs or what have you, and your clients are not going to want to deal with that. So similarly, let's say that the entire crawl space or maybe the north side is full of spider webs. Wherever the spider webs are, that's where the water is. So if it's the entire crawl space, you know you've got a problem that is unique, or that is not unique to any one corner. If it's the entire crawl space, the water might be coming up from beneath. And so you need to identify and address that issue to the client. By contrast, you know, maybe if it's a drainage issue that's going to be coming from a particular corner, and you can go down that road with your client as well. And all this stems from wherever the spider webs are. So pay attention to that. It took me a lot of years to get there. Another thing is, just because you can't see termite tunnels, that doesn't mean they're not there. The form for identifying termite problems and reporting the presence or lack thereof, that form says, hey, you know, whatever the termite inspector says just reflects what he saw. It doesn't actually reflect where there really are termites there. So the form is correct. You know, there was some bright minds that came up with that, and the right response to are there termites is no, I didn't see any. It is not no, there aren't any. Don't bury yourself that way. Another thing is that just because something is old doesn't mean it needs to be replaced. Quite often this happens in the category of water heaters. Maybe you get a water heater that's 10 years old, but it's still in good shape. I tell people that typically water heaters will last 8 to 10 years. Sometimes I'll see a water heater that's over 20 years old. And in many cases that was because maybe a single little old lady lived there for all 20 of those years, and maybe she never showered or whatever the reason was. But what I will say is that if a water heater, for example, is 12 years old, I will tell them that, you know, they typically last 8 to 10, and they should monitor it until it begins to leak, and then they should replace it. What I do not say is that this water heater is old and needs to be replaced. Again, and this is important to your clients, the realtors. You need to not overstate the importance of any particular issue, like, for example, this water heater is old, to conclude that it needs to be replaced. That's just not okay. I guess by contrast, if you're talking about an old electrical system, you need to make sure they understand the issues associated with that. All right, and then sometimes to illustrate, one of my favorite lines is that, hey, if age alone were justification to replace something, my wife would have replaced me long ago. It's a joke that I have used 100 times over, and it helps people to understand that, age by itself is not a deficiency. Now, if you can find something else going wrong too, maybe it's gurgling, maybe there's a leak somewhere, maybe there's some heavy corrosion that is needing to be repaired. If you're going to bring a plumber out anyway, now you got two things. You got age and you got this corrosion going on. That, to me, is justification to replace maybe a water heater or something along those lines. If you get the phone call that says, hey, you left and now my furnace doesn't work, 99% of the time it's because there is a lower panel cutoff sensor and you didn't get that lower panel back on, and it needs to be on securely. So as you're putting that thing back on, make sure you triple check that so that that cutoff sensor at the bottom is depressed and it knows that that lower panel cover is on. When you get that phone call, you didn't get that on, you can ask them to put that lower panel back on securely, or you can go over and do it yourself. Obviously if they hire an HVAC guy to come out there and do that, that's going to cost you $100 for them to go back out. So like I say, 99% of the time with furnaces, that's what the problem was. Next item is, I mentioned this earlier, but you get one mistake. Most people will give you the benefit of the doubt once. And so and as I mentioned earlier, if you show up in a dumpy car, or if you show up in Levi's in a t-shirt, that's your one mistake. You don't get to make any more mistakes after that. So show up professionally, have the right shirt on, show up in a truck. We all have, there's ladders that you could put in any car, but you lose credibility. So be very careful about not making any mistakes, because, we all make them. It's going to be guaranteed, but you get one. And if your one is incidental and then you showed up late or whatever, now that's two. And now you've lost your credibility. You're not going to get any more leads. You will have proved that you suck, and the realtor is going to go with somebody else, and the buyer is not going to trust you, etc., etc., etc. Just make sure that that everything you say and everything you do is professional, calm, managed, honest, truthful, knowledgeable. You've got to cover all your bases every time. You're charging a lot of money per hour, and people expect that level of competence from you.